Welcome back to the channel. Remember this? Or perhaps you remember this. Hit the comments if you know what that one is. We're gonna unlock that sound. The DJ Mustard 2010s bass sound that moved so many butts back in those days. Oh, that's silly. These sounds are essentially the same, and I'm going to teach you the building blocks to get that sound. We're going to use Europa, and we'll pack it into a Combinator so you can take it with you. It took me a little while to figure out, so let me show you. Okay, so here we are in the rack. We'll start with a Combinator. I'm pressing Control-Shift-F to just jump over to the search bar here in the devices list. So we'll do that again, and we will add a Europa. Actually, we'll add a line mixer first, because we just do. That's a go-to. And Control-Shift-F, Europa. So the initial bits didn't take me all that long to figure out, but you'll see at the end there's a secret ingredient that made it difficult to nail the sound. So as I was listening, I heard square waves. Let's make sure we got some MIDI on this channel. Press M to unmute it, F6 to go back to the rack, and so far we have this. That ain't it so far. Now I heard octaves. That's the first thing I heard. So we'll leave this square where it is, and we will add another square, an octave down. Something like that. And now the sound also has a low, like bass thing. So we'll go 2 octaves down and we'll use a sine. Now, I can't really hear that, even in my in-ears. So you definitely can't hear that if you're on your phone speaker or whatever, or if you don't have a sub in the room. So in order to make it a little bit more audible, I'm gonna fold it a bit. Now I can hear it a little bit better. And I'm gonna jack that all the way up, most of the way up. And we'll send all 3 oscillators to the filter. I'll turn these back on. And let's mix these in against the sub. Ooh, let's open the filter all the way so we can hear everything. And we'll add the high layer. Something like that for now. A little bit of drive. And the other thing I heard while I was trying to figure this out is I heard some unison. I heard some width. There's also a reverb, but we'll get there. But I heard some unison. So we will add some unison to the top layer. Keep the middle layer right up, middle in terms of frequency layer, right up the middle, and keep the sub obviously right up the middle. I also like to blend the unison so that the center voice is the loudest. So just a little bit like that. So let's hear that. So we're getting there. We'll probably need to adjust the volumes of things in a minute, but first, we're hearing, I heard the filter modulating. So we'll point it to envelope 1 because envelope 1's already the shape I want pretty much. And we'll turn loop off of envelope 1. And we can bring the filter down and we want it to open every time a note is struck. So we'll add some modulation and let's try that. We're getting closer. Now it sounds like the filter is making the right shape. The envelope is making the right shape and affecting the filter frequency, but it's opening and closing too quickly. So we can control the speed of the envelope here, and we can slow it down by turning it to the left. So now we're getting closer. The other thing that I heard in this sound, and I opened up the filter modulation a little more. I want it to affect a little more of the highs. That sounds right. Sounds more right. The other thing I heard in the original sound is a bit of distortion. So we're going to turn the distortion on, leave it on the regular distortion. I'm not sure what that's modeling, and open up the tone all the way so that it affects the whole sound, including the highs. I also want that to be modulated by envelope 1. So I'm going to use this arrow here and point it to the drive of the distortion and introduce some of that in so that it plucks the drive up with this shape. I'm going to bring the drive all the way down and control how much drive gets introduced each time a note is hit by increasing this amount. If I go hard, you can hear it really well. So it adds some attack and some distortion, but we'll bring it down to a reasonable volume. We're getting close. Let's open this all the way. Let's see what that sounds like. Yeah, that's closer. So the other thing, I'm going to change the key mode to re-trigger just to make sure none of the notes overlap, because I'm going to add a little bit of release. Just a tiny bit. If I go ham, you can hear the low end of the bass, whatever, because the filter already closed. So everything that's still audible rings out a little bit. Well, in this case, too much, but we want just a little bit. So there we go. A little bit of release. And the other thing I heard in the original sound is that there's reverb involved. So in order to get that going, I could use the reverb that's built into the Europa, but it's going to affect the entire sound, including the low end, which I don't want. So instead, I will use a stereo imager. Somewhere in the comments, someone's freaking out. Like, I told you didn't need to make that splitter last week. I know, bud. I know. It was an exercise. Relax. So here we go. You can also use, and I would use that splitter that I made in the previous video. I'll link it. Except for that it's in a Combinator, and you can't put combinators in combinators. So I'm going to show you another way to do it. So we will take this imager and add a reverb underneath it. I will show you how to route it. So ultimately, the sound that was going out of the Europa and into the Combinator is going to now be coming out of the stereo imager. So the Europa goes into the stereo imager, and then we're going to use the separate out from the stereo imager set to the high band. So it's only going to send what's above the cutoff frequency when we set it to the reverb and back up to channel 2 on our line mixer. So channel 2 is just the reverb fully wet, and also we'll set it to a medium room, kind of this size with this decay. And we can set the crossover frequency to maybe, I don't know, 787, almost 800 hertz, and see if that's right in a second as we bring it in. So we have a medium room size here, decay there. Yeah, cool. And we'll bring it in and see what that sounds like. Maybe a little more decay. We'll make it less damp, which makes it a little bit brighter. We're getting close. So I got here a bunch of times. I tried this a bunch of times, and I just wasn't getting the sound. It sounds that the shape is right, the waves are right, the fact that there's reverb is right, the unison on top sounds right. We can actually even add a little more of that top layer. But it just wasn't sounding right. So this is where, if you're trying to break down a sound, context matters. So I started thinking, okay, 2010s. What were they using on sounds in the 2010s that made them, in your face and sound cool? And after a while of thinking about it, it came to me. It's probably OTT. So let's try that. If you're not familiar with OTT, it is a multi-band compression expansion thing. It was originally a patch in Ableton for their multi-band dynamics that kind of took over the sound of the 2010s in EDM and in hip hop because it works so well. Now, we're lucky that Steve Duda from Extra Records made a version of it that's available for free and outside of Ableton. So let's get this routed in. Now, we want this to affect the entire sound. So we're going to take the mixer output, which is going to the Combinator currently, into the Combinator. And we're going to bypass that by going from the mixer into the OTT and back into the Combinator. And then we can tweak this. Now, a lot of Mustard sounds, actually, Mustard is or his engineer maybe, is very good at keeping the mid-range tight. I don't know the word to use there. The music is in the mid-range, people say. So there's a lot of mid-range, there's a decent amount of bass, and then there's some highs, right? So let's bring the depth in and see what we get. Now that's more like it. Now we're doing it. We can bring the bass down just a little bit. Now that we've compressed and expanded this, the reverb is a little bit too loud. So we'll bring that down. Maybe we have too much release now. That sounds pretty good. Let's tweak the speed of the envelope just a little bit. Boom. Cool. And then, so that's the basic building blocks of that sound. And to get closer to the other track, we can tighten up the filter. Basically, tightening up or loosening the speed of the filter kind of gives you different flavors. Right? A little slower and you get more of the grit. A little faster and it gets tighter. Maybe a little less reverb still. And there you have it. I'll pack this up for you in case you weren't following along, and you can download it from my website and capture the sound of the 2010s. If you like these synthesis tutorials, check this video out right here where I recreate the organ-based sound from Show Me Love. Check it out.